recording. Hello, welcome to the Supporting Young People with Low Mood webinar. This is a webinar for parents and carers of children and young people that are in Trafford schools. And we are Trafford Thrive in Education. I'm Rebecca Holland, team lead, and this is Christian.
Christian, I'm an education mental health practitioner with Trafford Thrive in Education.
Okay, so we are an NHS CAMHS service based in schools and colleges across Trafford. We work with young people and their families to support their mental health and wellbeing. So what to expect from today? So understanding low mood from a mental health perspective, how to talk to your child when they might be struggling with low mood, what you can do to support them and what they can do to support themselves, and where to get more help if you need it.
Okay. So over the next few slides, we're going to be thinking a little bit of the difference between what low mood is, what low well-being is, and having a bit of a look at the CBT model for low mood as well. So well-being and mood is generally about how we feel on a day-to-day basis. Having high well-being is often defined as feeling good and functioning well. Some examples of that might be positive relationships with others, safety and security, being able to look after themselves, being able to have fun or feel like they're having fun, having adequate shelter and nutrition, opportunities to learn and develop, and having positive self-image. It's important to note that these are not exhaustive, just some examples of what high well-being might look like for someone. We felt it was important to define the difference between low mood and depression. And essentially, from our point of view, low mood is a temporary feeling of sadness or unhappiness, often linked to something specific that's happened. So usually a trigger. Some examples here are having a friendship breakdown at school, having a bad test result at school, whereas depression is more of a chronic condition, so more long-lasting, characterized by more intense and prolonged symptoms, typically for weeks or months at a time, which have a significant impact on day-to-day functioning. Low intensity CBT is well placed to support with low mood, as it really looks to break the cycle and look at some of those thoughts and behaviours at a closer level.
Okay. So just looking at recognising low mood, and as we've discussed, it's normal to feel sad at times. However, what might you notice if someone was struggling with low mood? So changes in sleeping habits, fatigue, feeling worthless or guilty, loss of interest in regular activities, eating more or less, withdrawing from others, being overly negative or critical. So lots of different changes that can happen, increase or decrease in different things like eating and sleeping as well. But it is just different for everyone. It's important to remember that. And it is as well that we all might experience some of these symptoms from time to time. However, if they've lasted for a few weeks, that's typically a sign to get some more help.
So we do have a case study, which we are going to share as part of this webinar. And this case study runs through a couple of other slides as well, just to really exemplify how we identify what low mood is and also how we might sort of combat that as well a bit later on. So this is Camille, and Camille is a 15-year-old male who lives with his mother and older brother. For the last few weeks, Camille has been feeling really annoyed with everybody. He also feels tired all the time, is struggling to get sleep at night and finds it hard to get out of bed in the morning. He generally feels grumpy and hopeless as things seem to be getting worse. Camille is arguing with his brother a lot more than usual and has stopped meeting up with friends after school due to a recent disagreement. He's also spending more time in his room, on his phone or occasionally gaming. Camille has started getting into a lot of trouble at school for turning up late, not completing his homework and missing lessons. His grades are falling and he's struggling to concentrate, and he's getting lots of detentions. Camille used to play football regularly for both his school and local team. He's recently lost interest in this and is going to training and matches less. So we're going to have a little bit of a think about Camille's example here and think about how that plays into the low mood cycle, which is on the next slide.
Okay. So yes, this is the low mood cycle for people with persistent low mood. So as we can see, when we are low in mood, we feel low. We do less activity, so that's maybe not doing the hobbies that we enjoy. For Camille, that's not playing football anymore, neglecting self-care, keeping busy, but deprioritizing some valued activities, and getting less out of life. So this is the cycle that we can get stuck in. And some of the thoughts you might hear from you in person might be about feeling disconnected from others, saying things like no one likes me, nothing matters, having few opportunities to feel good as a result of this, so my life is rubbish, and interpreting lack of activity negatively. So I can't do anything, or I'm useless. So as you can see, this cycle is really demotivating, and it doesn't help us at all to feel better about things. Okay, so next we'll go on to Camille's Lumia cycle.
Yeah, you touched on it a little bit. However, this slide is essentially the same as the last, but looks at Camille's information and where his sort of experience fits in with this cycle as well. So examples of Camille's less activity would be finding it hard to get out of bed, stopping meeting up with friends, isolating himself, not doing his homework, and playing football less. This leads to the same outcomes in terms of getting less out of life. So he still has that disconnected from self and others, no one likes me, nothing matters. He still feels those fewer opportunities to feel good, my life might be rubbish. And he can interpret a lot of activity negatively. So he can't do anything, I'm useless as a result of doing less activity. This then leads on to the feeling low segment, which for Camille felt like being annoyed with everybody, feeling tired all the time, feeling grumpy, and feeling hopeless. As you can imagine, this cycle's quite debilitating, as Rebecca touched on. And we're going to have a little bit of a think about how we might break out of that cycle over the next few slides. So, talking about emotions then is a very difficult thing to do sometimes, and it's not something we're ever really explicitly taught on how to do, or even how to recognize emotions sometimes. And for young people as well, when there's lots of hormones going around, it's really difficult to have those conversations or even identify what we're feeling as well. So we're going to have a bit of a chat about talking about emotions and what you might do as a parent or carer to really aid with that process. Talking about emotions, there's lots of stigma attached to it, and oftentimes, people feel like how they feel is not important, or they try and take away from that experience because they don't want to burden others, or they don't want people to think that they've got a problem. Absolutely not the case. It's okay to not be okay. And as a parent or carer, you can absolutely facilitate those conversations and encourage them as well. Before you engage in conversation with someone, it's important to understand the situation that they're in. So they need to be calm. Having a conversation when someone might be distressed or upset or angry, probably not the best time to start introducing the idea of talking about how they might feel. So at that point, you'd really look to try and regulate the individual, which would be the bottom of the triangle here. We need to help regulate the young person and calm their emotions. Obviously, when they're upset, angry, or distressed by something, their fight, flight, freeze response is on high alert. They might be feeling really tense, sweaty, upset. And you really just want to seek to reduce that as much as possible before trying to approach conversations with someone about their emotions. Once you've completed that step and they feel a bit calmer, it's really important on the next stage to relate to that young person, connect with them, be very validating, consider your body language, use eye contact, be very approachable, talk in a quiet tone, just really invite that young person to know that this is a safe space, a calm space. And then the final step is reasoning. So once they've regulated, once that you've related with them and sort of validated their experience, you can then begin to try and problem solve some of those issues or some of those emotions with the young person. A lot of this stage is important, and it can help sort of reduce the regulation stage in future stages, because if you help them to reflect on the experience and how to manage that experience better for the next time, they might need less support with that regulation and the overall cycle here. what the young person learns from the reasoning stage should be very young person led. So as a parent, you're looking to really sort of ask questions which prompt them to think about things and problem solve by themselves. And we've got some lovely examples on how to do this on the next slide. So having a conversation, we've got some examples on how to pose some questions sometimes which can help at this sort of reasoning stage. So the first step is being curious. So we've got 3 questions as examples here. I've noticed you seem down lately. Can we talk about it? What makes you say that if you're having a conversation with a young person already? And can you tell me a bit more about that? All these questions are curious, so you're not necessarily saying that they're feeling a certain way and you're not assuming anything, but you're also inviting them to open up and have that conversation too. There's no way that you can sort of say a yes or no answer to it. They have to give you a little bit more. So can we talk about it? I mean, they could say no to that, I suppose, and that's entirely within their right, but you're not necessarily assuming what they feel down about or what their problem is. You're letting them sort of open up and speak about that as well. The second stage is validation. This is very much your reasoning stage. So that sounds really difficult. I'm sorry to hear that you've been feeling like that. I'd be very upset too if that happened to me. It's very much just validating their experience, making them feel heard, and you know that you get it, and they can approach you and sort of confide in you as well. The next stage is planning. So it's very much that reasoning stage. What do you think might help next time? What would you like to happen next? Do you want some time to think about what we've talked about? And then we can come up with a plan together. These are great examples of a plan that you can make once you've sort of done that regulation and validation. Really think about how the young person can support themselves in the next instance. And then affirming as well, make sure that you're really validating that whole experience by saying, thanks for sharing that with me. I'm glad that you feel comfortable to do that, and it helped me to help you. And it's brave to open up. I'm glad that you could talk to me about it. Have that positive reinforcement. It really helps sort of aid those future conversations as well, if there's any struggles with that.
Okay, so what might help? So we'll be looking at ways of increasing activity in order to feel better, as well as some preventative strategies to maintain good well-being more generally. Okay, so coming back to the low mood cycle and thinking about how we can break this, because we talked about how this was demotivating and very challenging to get out of for a young person. So breaking this cycle can be about breaking the link between feeling low and doing less. So it's a behavior first approach. So not challenging the feeling, but challenging the behavior instead. So like we said, typically feeling low is demotivating. So it can be finding ways to re-motivate. Okay, and this is where an experienced therapist can sometimes help. But looking at this activity, low mood cycle, we've got what we showed you before. So feel low, do less to get less out of life. So by trying to introduce activities that make you feel better, you will feel a little bit better and then get a bit more out of life. Okay. So it can be difficult to do more if you're feeling low. It can also be difficult to do more if you've got challenging circumstances. So knowing where to put your effort in can make a big difference to it as well. And what's important is letting your young person lead on what they want to do and support them where you can. So there's just some ideas. So does this activity align with their values? Does this activity make them feel connected to other people? Does this activity give them a sense of accomplishment? And does it